In a previous season, we did deal with the question of Marikana and the consequences and the causes, but it's an issue that in some ways hasn't gone away for obvious reasons. But more than that, the entire mining sector is really at the center of huge controversy, and more than that, at the center of our debate about economic growth, both in relation to efficiency and equity. To discuss a range of these issues tonight, I'm fortunate to have with me Peter Bailey from National Union Mine Workers, Jeffrey Mphahlele from AMCU, and Gavin Hartford is a labour analyst from Shop. Now, one of the issues that I've touched on already was, of course, what happened at Marikana and the death of a whole lot of people as a result of police shooting. I'm using neutral words because, as you know, viewers, that particular issue is a subject of the Mphahlele inquiry. But I think it's not unimportant to contextualise any debate, but just reminding ourselves of that context, of what happened on that fateful day, and why it's served to focus our attention more than almost any other event on the mining sector as a whole. So there's a clip that we want to show you in this particular regard. Again, let me stress, this program is not about the causes of what occurred there or who's at fault. It is, however, to contextualise the events of that day, which in turn, I think, have given rise to us focusing our attention on the subject matter of tonight's program. Well, we had a look at that, and I don't want to, as I say, talk about that directly, but Peter, what I do want to ask you, that certainly has focused attention on the mining sector more than any other issue. What I'm intrigued to know is this very critical sector for the South African economy is now, not to put too blunt a term, it's actually in turmoil. And so how do you see the kind of stabilisation of the mining sector and accordingly growth and jobs flowing from that critical part of our economy?
Good evening to you and your viewers and my fellow panelists. What has happened there is very, very sad and unfortunate. Yeah. And I don't think we would ever be able to condone it. Leave the rights or the wrongs thereof.
That's going to be inquired into separately,
That
yes.
is a total different process. But yes, the mining industry has been, let me not say dumped into turmoil. I think what one should explicitly express is the fact that the focus and attention has now been redirected to the mining industry for the first time in decades. And that the mining industry now has a responsibility to ensure that the plight of the mine workers are now seriously addressed.
But can I ask you, I know I don't have somebody from the mining chamber here. Now, perhaps I should have, and we could have negotiated a whole deal between the four of us then, and everybody would have been happy. You could have gone and have another cup of tea. We can't do that. But what I do want to ask you is, they argue, and economists argue, that in fact with the various prices of minerals falling, that the industry is really under pressure, and the kind of industrial unrest that we are seeing at the moment is having massively detrimental consequences to the South African economy in general and to prospects of employment in particular, which must concern you.
It certainly does. It should concern all of us. It shouldn't only concern the trade union movement. But the fact of the matter
but I'm asking you as a trade union movement. That's why you're here.
No, I fully concur with you. But the fact of the matter is that the mining industry, when everything was hunky-dory in the mining industry, they never attempted to put away for rainy days. That would contribute or attribute the fact to that the reality of the matter is they've been reckless in the manner in which they did their preparations for rainy days. Secondly, the mining industry still is very reckless in terms of handing out bonuses and paying CEO salaries, that they don't consider the consequences thereof.
All right, we'll come back to that. But let me ask you this, Jeff. It is said that what's going to happen if they ever get out of the trouble that they're in, that is, if there's not huge disinvestment from the mining sector in the first place, is that we'll see more mechanisation and your members are going to lose jobs. And that's going to have a massive effect on very many people and their families. And unless this is sorted out, you can't win in the long run. Not because they can win, no one's going to win.
I don't think that that would just be instant. It's not that something that would happen overnight.
Yeah, but it's happening.
There has to be a process. And as a matter of fact, that's why we are calling for reskilling of people, so that when that eventually took place, we should be in a position, or has taken place, we should be in a position to redirect the skills of the people to other areas. And we cannot say that it will not happen, but with a thorough planning. The problems that we are experiencing is because of lack of planning. All the planning that goes together with this are affected by the profit seekers.
Well, the argument is that they don't make quite the great profit that you claim they do.
We cannot.
And if they don't make a profit, why would they invest? And if they're not going to invest, we won't have mines. I mean, I know it's very simple, but that's at root what their argument is.
No, we know that each and every business has to make profit. That's a given, but not at the expense of the workers. It has been happening in South Africa.
All right, okay. Let me ask you, Gavin. I mean, this is an industry in crisis.
Yeah, Dennis, I think that for me, Marikana represented the sort of personification of an underlying crisis that in fact developed over,
and as I've said before,
over the last 150
yes.
years. In fact, the industry has certain structural constraints that it's operated in over a number of years. And in a sense, Marikana brought that all out and said to the industry and said to us as South Africans, as a nation, this industry needs to be radically transformed. And by that I mean it needs to be transformed both from the point of view of the business operating model to extract more value out of production than is currently happening. There's massive losses in respect of the 365-day type production program. And it has to find a new transformed identity in which all stakeholders, labour stakeholders, local communities and shareholders can share in the wealth of this industry.
All right, I'm going to come back to that. I need to take a break, but let me come back to that shortly thereafter.
News that moves. ENCA.com.